recording.
There it is. Now it is.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gen Friends. We're so excited to have everybody here tonight. We are playing around with a new platform. We are moved over to Zoom, and so we just hope this is going to record and do what we want it to do. And everybody, look at this gorgeous panel that I have. We have a full house tonight. We have Mary Kircher-Roddy from MKR Genealogy. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi. I'm doing good. Good to be here.
So glad you're here. We have Christine Woodcock from Genealogy Tours of Scotland. Hello,
hey.
Christine. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. So glad you're here. We have Shelley Murphy. She is the family tree girl. Hey,
hello.
Shelley. How are you?
I'm good.
So glad you're here tonight. We've got Catherine Lake Hogan from Looking for Ancestors. Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad you guys have all used Zoom before and are helping me out with this. And last but of course not least, we have Melisa Barker, the archive lady. She's here with her books in the back because we are going to talk about books tonight. How are you, Melisa?
I'm doing great, Cheri. Doing great.
Good. Well, we decided it would be a good topic to talk about genealogy books. What are we reading now? What do we recommend for other people? And, you know, we can talk a little bit about where we can get them too, because I don't want to just show books and then not tell anybody where we can get them. So who would like to start out? I wouldn't be surprised if some of us show the same book. So it'll be interesting. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, so I don't know what everybody has. So
well, I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
I'll start.
Okay.
I kind of looked at my shelf and I thought, well, what am I going to pick? And I thought I'd pick something that somebody else probably wouldn't pick. So I picked some niche areas. I am about half Irish and 25% German, and the rest of it's a little of this, a little of that. So I'm going to show two books that I have. One is called Tips and Tricks for Deciphering German Handwriting. And it's by Catherine Schober, and she is just great. And this book, it's 95 pages, but it just has wonderful things. If you're trying to read old German script handwriting, there are just so many tips in this book. And Catherine Schober, I've seen her at conferences. She does some things, if you follow her on Facebook, she does some little classes that you can listen to about tips and tricks for deciphering German handwriting. So if anybody has German handwriting they're trying to learn to read, this is a really good book for that.
Oh, that's great. I've got some Germans, just a few German, one German family on my line. And so, but I've got to get them out of South Carolina before I get I've got to get to that point, but that's great because I know we'll get to the point where I might have to start looking at German records. I haven't had to do that yet. So,
and I took a week-long course at the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy earlier this year. But this is just a really good handbook to kind of have by my side.
That's great.
And you want my other one? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Mary.
Hang on. I got a question.
Yes.
Mary, that week-long course you took, was it in German handwriting?
Yes.
Wow.
It was in Gothic script and Fraktur. So it told how to read the handwritten records and then the printed records with like the typeface, the Fraktur font that they use in the German newspapers.
Wow.
Like the headers in parish registers.
Oh, that's so cool.
That is cool.
It was great. And it was the funnest class I have ever had. Our final for the class, Warren Bittner is just fabulous. And he had a bunch of flashcards, words on the table. And he would say what the English word was. And we all had fly swatters. And we had to slap it down on the right word. Hit the table first, got that word. And I'm a little competitive, so helping my classmates out of the way so I could get the word.
What a great way to learn, though. That's fabulous. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, did you have a second book?
Yes, I did. And I have to thank the archive lady, Melisa, for this. So I do book reviews for the FGS magazine, and Melisa is the reviews editor, and she sent me this book. It's called The Genealogist Handbook for Irish Research by Marie E. Daly and Judith Lucy. And this book was one of the hardest books I've ever had to read, because every page I had to stop. Wait, I have to try that on so-and-so. And wait, I have to do that on so-and-so. And I mean, I have just so many notes in the margin where, like, ideas that I got to, look at Bartley Roddy for this one, or look at James Ahern for that one.
Yeah. Oh.
And I just could not get through this book. It had so much cool information. And I even wrote a blog post about it. In this book, she used some famous Irish people, and probably the most famous Irish family you could think of would be the Kennedys, of course. And so she talks about one of the Kennedy ancestors' marriage records in Boston around 1852 or something like that.
Wow.
Same exact priest. I mean, she showed the record. I recognized the name. It was the same priest that married right here.
That's amazing.
I love it.
Awesome.
So it was super cool.
That is cool.
So anyway, this is another book. If you have Irish ancestors and you are wanting ideas of different research strategies and websites, this book is just filled with them.
I would like that one if I could ever find them. No, and the thing is just common names. It's William Michael Murphy.
Oh,
and so I'm thinking that might be a good support tool to make me think, in with their records and not the records here for what I know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great idea. I think I'm going to get that.
I think Irish research, you cannot do it in my book without a serious fan club.
Yeah.
You will not make any headway unless you find the whole group.
Yeah.
That's how I've gotten back to Ireland.
That's a good tip too. Chris, what you got for us?
So because I don't do client research, I knew my books weren't going to be on anybody else's list. So the first one that I want to show, it's called Glenaladale Settlers. And it's the first group that came into what is now Prince Edward Island. And what I really like about it, it was written by the Historical Society, but what I really like about it is that it not only tells about the settlers, but it does an entire genealogy for them.
Wow.
So I tell everybody when I do my talk about emigration from Scotland to Canada that that's what they want. If they have somebody who came over in that time frame, they need to grab that book.
Huh.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Did you have anything else for us? That's really neat. I love that.
So the other one that I really like, and I don't think it started out as a genealogy book. I don't know that it would be classified as a genealogy book. It's called Follow the River. And I'm not even sure how I found it. Probably, when you go on Amazon and they have that stuff that pops up, maybe.
Yes.
And it says Traces of the Red River Women. And I have long had a fascination with the Hudson's Bay Company. And this is one woman who is a descendant of a man who was an officer for the Hudson's Bay Company. And her great-grandmother died in a horrific fire on the ship. And it was just as the ship was leaving. She had gone to visit her husband at the headquarters. And just as she was departing again to come home to her children, the boat caught fire and she perished, and people watched it and everything. So horrendous. So she's gone to find out. Her and her sister have taken a trip to find out more. And she has an old aunt who's 80-something and is absolute wealth of information. I just love when she has lunch with her aunt because you just know the juicy stuff's coming. All the stuff she's held on to and hasn't told anybody. And now she's nearly 90, she tells everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, those have been my two.
Those are great. Those are great resources. I love those. Let's see. Who'd like to go next? Anybody?
I'll go next.
Okay. All right.
Melisa.
Go ahead, Melissa.
All right. Because I have 1 foot in the genealogy world and 1 foot in the archives world, I chose this for my first book.
Mhm.
This is Organize Your Genealogy Strategies and Solutions for Every Researcher by Drew Smith. I absolutely love this book from a genealogy standpoint and also from an archivist standpoint.
Mhm.
And if you think that this is only going to talk to you about organizing your genealogy stuff, there's actually more in here. He talks about organizing your learning.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so he has things in here that's just not about your stuff. It says organizing your volunteering. And so to me, this kind of plays into both of my worlds.
Sure.
Now I have another book. Well, I have 3 other books, but they kind of go together. But this is like the regular book, the one that you can like pick up in the title and go purchase it. Now, my other books are just like suggestions of what I think genealogists should still look for. Local history books.
Absolutely.
This is green, and my green screen is going to look at what it did. My green screen is going to do it. This is, it doesn't matter, but this is actually our local county. Isn't that
It's
weird?
the ghost book.
My see-through book.
This is my local county's
Mirror on the wall.
Yeah, I know. But this is my local county's pictorial history book.
Yes, I love
We should
those.
always remember to look for the local county's history books, pictorial history books, no matter how old they are, no matter how many errors they have in them, because you might find that little piece of information. Along those lines, I also have this book. This is my personal book. It is the descendants of Alexander Waddell, Eleanor Rausch, Silas Cole Strait, which is my ancestor. This is a family history book written by families.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's old. It's out of print. It has errors in it. But these are indispensable for genealogy research. And the last one, and I'm not really touting this particular book, but this type of book. I read this book and I absolutely loved it, but it's this type of book. This one is The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington by Brad Meltzer. If you haven't read this book, you've got to read this book. This is his first nonfiction book. But anyway, read books about history in the time frame your ancestors lived. So I have revolutionary time frame ancestors, okay? I read this book, and it took place in New York during the Revolution. It has some great women in it that I never even heard about in history. But read these kinds of history books to give you the flavor of what was going on when your ancestors were living.
Exactly.
I know that my picks are kind of unorthodox, but
no, because I love that too, because then you start envisioning your ancestors living in that time period, and it helps you get closer to them and start thinking about, oh, they might have done this too. Where could I look for records on that? So, those are wonderful. You know, even if it's a historical fiction, it can do that for you.
Yes.
You know,
and just reading good writing, I mean, is so important to being able to write.
This is very well written. If you haven't read this book, if you like this kind of stuff, I'd highly encourage it. And I don't recommend a lot of books, but this one was really good.
I've got a son-in-law that just loves Revolutionary War things and George Washington. I'm thinking about him because his birthday's tomorrow. I wonder if book.
Overnight delivery on Amazon, quick.
Yes. They'll get it. If you do it before midnight, if you do it by 9 o'clock.
Exactly, maybe he'll get it. Oh goodness, that's really funny. Those are great. Thank you so much for sharing those. Catherine, what do you have?
It's on a BRB, I think.
Uh-oh.
You're muted.
There you go.
Oh, there she is.
There you go. Sorry, I muted myself and I couldn't get back on. Okay, so okay, the first one I'm going to show you, I cannot find my copy of it. So what I did is I quickly just did a little screen share here real quick so you can see it. Just pop that up here for you. Okay, so you should be able to see it. It's called I've Got a Home in Gloryland.
I'm not. Are you guys seeing anything?
I cannot see it.
It says Catherine has started screen sharing, but there's nothing there.
Just hold on.
That's weird.
It may
we
come
all
up in a
dropped
second.
to the side.
Okay, I don't know what it's doing. That's weird.
It's not coming through. She might not have.
There it is.
Okay, so this is a book called I've Got a Home in Gloryland by Dr. Carolyn Smards Frost. And Dr. Frost is a professor. I think I'm not sure if she's still at Dalhousie University or not. She specializes in studying African American history in Canada. This book here came to my attention approximately 7-8 years ago. There was an article that I saw in one of the Toronto newspapers about a school. They were excavating the playground, and they found artifacts underneath the tarmac, and they started investigating who was the person that lived there at the time. And it turned out it was a man by Thornton Blackburn, sorry. His name was Thornton Blackburn. And Dr. Frost started to investigate who he was. And this is what this book is about. It's about the escape of Thornton Blackburn and his wife from Kentucky, and how they escaped and came into Canada and then eventually settled in Toronto. And the reason I picked it as a genealogy book is because not only does it read as a novel, but she has all the notes, all of her research notes are in there. 20 years worth of research went into this story here, and she includes all the notes. So when I started reading the book, I actually read the book twice. The first time I read it right through just to get the story because I was so excited about what happened. And the amount of detail she found out about Thornton and what happened is, it just blows your mind. The amount of detail, the laws at the time and the things that they did and the implications of what happened, all of those things. And then I went back a second time and I read it, and that second time, then I went back through and I really started looking at all the footnotes and where was she getting that information. So it's a fact-based narrative of what happened to Thornton Blackburn and his wife Lucy, and the implications of what happened to them still ring through today. So it's a fabulous, fabulous novel. I loved it. It was great.
Sounds fascinating.
It is.
I'm making a list, you guys. I'm checking it twice.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. So that one I really enjoyed. And then the second book I have is right here. This is my book right here. I'm going to hold that up so you can see it.
Layabouts.
Loyalist and Layabouts. Again, it is a fact-based narrative from the perspective of a man who was in the 13 colonies during the American Revolutionary War. He was a loyalist, okay, and there was a group of men that got together called the Port Roseway Associates. And he was just kind of on the fringes of it. He was they were a popular group, and he wasn't popular. And he was trying to get in there, and he was trying to be popular. And so the book is based on his actual diary of what happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And so the author, Stephen, he puts in, quotes from the Bible, and he weaves that into the narrative of the story. And so it tells you about what happened to the refugees from the American Revolution, and they came to Nova Scotia. And so it's not just about the white people who settled in Nova Scotia. It's also, he also goes further and looks at the Black Loyalists that settled in Nova Scotia as well, and then some of the main people who were there and what happened to them, and why a whole group of them ended up emigrating and going to, I believe it was Sierra Leone, and they left North America. So that's the second book. So two books.
Catherine, can you hold up that book again? I want to see the author. What's the author?
The Stephen something.
Stephen
Kimber.
Kimber. Thank you.
Okay, can you guys I put mine in the chat log. Can you type your titles and authors in the chat log so we have them?
Yes.
Yeah, and that way it'll go right into the blog post, and I'll get as much as I can as YouTube will let me put, in the description box. But I'll have it all in the blog post too. So Fabulous. Fabulous.
Okay. Is it me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Catherine, did you have another or just the two?
No,
or
I'm all done.
are you
I'm
done?
all done.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Shelley, what do you have for us?
Well, the first one I got today. Actually,
Oh,
I know what it
the Orange
is.
County, Virginia Historical Society. And and I'm saying this following up a little bit of what Melissa said, but this is about local. But it's called the Clerks of Orange County. And what it did, it walked you all the way through the setup from the early, 1600s all the way through how they set up the courts and where the records went and who did what when. And I thought, wow, I found that and I thought, well, this is wonderful. And he was the volunteer at the Historical Society, who he was one of the clerks at one of the times. So he basically wrote a history about the evolution of Virginia in the judicial system. And it's really not boring, I swear. I started reading while I was eating, but it walked through how they broke it down and saw that this didn't work. They added the other little courts in them. But that is giving me direction for records in Virginia.
Sure.
Because this was Orange County, and if you know anything about Virginia, Orange County was probably pretty much half of the state at one time, and then they got all these counties that broke off from it. And the reason it pulled an interest, because one of my lines that Cousin Russ and I connect on, he in 1734 was one of the first, there was a small group of justices, they called them. And I was looking to understand, okay, well, how long were you here? Did you own land? Da-da-da-da-da. And so that's what pulled me to that. So that was one. I have to go with the Old Faithfuls. Even though this is a newer book, I am going to talk about Kenyatas. And the reason...
I almost pulled that one down.
Yeah, and Tony Burrell's book is another one that I would couple with this. And I'm going to say why. Because I don't care how long I've been doing this or any of us. Those basics are the things that keep us really going. It's not
absolutely.
stuff, and it's not even the internet. It is you walking in at the local level and dealing with these things you put together. I'm not going to say it's simple, but it's comprehensive. And Tony Burrell's book, it doesn't matter if you're doing African American research or European research, you walk through, because he's covering, and this has been out, since 2006, his book, and it's over here somewhere, and I couldn't grab it. And the book's over here. And the other thing is, never forget when you write about your own family. This is Bernice's book, and I used
Shout out to our panelist, Bernice.
Tracing Their Steps. I used this at Maggie this past July as a training tool. And I had them read the book, or they could bring their own brick wall and what their plan was for attack. But what we did is we walked through the steps that she did to find where her great-great-grandfather, Peter Clark, owned land. Because all she got was one sentence, and that was that my grandfather owned a lot of land. She didn't know where. She knew it was Louisiana, but didn't know where. So another one of those with those grounding rules for us as researchers. I mean, people can write the fanciest stuff, but it's telling the story that really gets us back to the records and things that we want.
Absolutely.
So that one last one.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's in the other room because Mama's going to read it. I've grabbed it. And that's Pioneers by David McCullough.
Yes.
And I have not read that yet, but my girlfriend up in Michigan, who I grew up with, said, now you can go find your people. She's talking about them settling from, New England basically, and where everybody was going if they didn't stay there. But I'm a lover of David McCullough's books, all of his books, 1776 and all of those. So as soon as Mom gets done with it, I'll be reading.
Then you'll be reading it. Oh, you guys, these are some fabulous.
That's fine.
Well, let me show you a couple of the ones that I pulled off the shelf. I'm like, I don't know. I could have pulled the whole shelf off.
Oh, I could have.
Oh gosh, I said so. I got some of the more basic books. Like We just finished this with Mert. Yeah. The Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy by Val D. Greenwood, and this is the 4th edition.
Yes.
And I think this makes the point, and another one I'll show in a minute. When a new edition comes along, we need to grab the new edition, even if we have the book, because things change in genealogy all the time. And so things are updated, and so we need to make sure we've got the latest edition. Maybe you can take your other edition and donate it somewhere or something, but we'll let them know, you know, this is the older one. But anyway, so this is very basic. Whether you're a beginner or not, it just goes through so many different church records, cemetery records, probate records, all types of records, and talks about how to search them and places where you can find them. So this one we just finished going chapter by chapter.
I only made it about halfway through. That was about half a year.
28 chapters. So we did a study group, you know, per chapter. So I recommend this, especially whether, you know, maybe starting out, yes, you really need to learn about these records, but even if you've been doing it for a while, it's great to get a refresher. It really is great to get a refresher and get new ideas and other people's thoughts. We can always learn something. Even if we've been doing genealogy for decades, we can pick up a beginning genealogy book and learn something. So wherever they are, pick up the book and read it, you know, and learn something from it. The next one I'm reading to see, it's got my highlighter. Oop, it just fell out, my highlighter. I got Blaine's, you know, 2nd edition to his Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. Now, I'm going to be honest with y'all. DNA has been kind of difficult for me. It hasn't been, I never did well with math. I never did well with science. And so all this DNA started coming out and it was like, whoop, over my head. But
mine too.
I'm finally getting to the point where it's clicking. And I got to hear him speak in South Carolina last month. And I was listening to him going, I'm understanding now what he's saying. So I had the 1st edition, so I bought the 2nd edition, and I'm going through it. And I'm going to get my DNA knowledge up there. I'm going to be able to understand what I'm doing. So, and Blaine has, and not that other people don't, but he's got a good way of explaining things that somehow it's connecting with me. Not that others don't, but because I had just heard him speak and his book just came out, I wanted to get it. And it's jam-packed full of charts and all sorts of visual. I'm a visual learner, so it's full of things like that. So that was one. And then, of course, the North Carolina, you guys, have you seen this? The North Carolina Research Genealogy and Local History book by Helen Leary.
I have that.
Yes. Now, you don't have to have North Carolina ancestors for this book. This book is a how-to do genealogy work no matter where you're doing research. So look how thick it is. I mean, I was reading it someplace once and somebody walked up to me and goes, oh my gosh, it's going to take you forever to finish that. But I mean, you don't like take it at the beginning and read it. You go through the different subjects that you're interested in, and then you get, you know, to the end because you've gone through each chapter. So this is a really good book. I am not quite sure. It's still in print. Bless you, Mary. And you can still get it. I didn't even think to look that up, but I think there's still some booksellers that have this book, because I haven't had it for that many years. So
I bought it just a couple years ago.
Yes. So yeah. So, and we're gonna, in a minute, I want us to talk about where we can get these books, where people can find them. And then the last one I got was so I keep getting these, except for the North Carolina books, these new editions. But this is the Professional Genealogist. This is the newest edition of this one too. And
I got it too.
Yeah, so I know people will look at this and say, but I don't want to be a professional genealogist. I'm not a professional genealogist. It doesn't matter. It's the same kind of thing, you know, techniques for learning, techniques for records, techniques for writing. Even if you're just writing for yourself, you need it to come across where people can understand what you're saying. And so this is a really good book as well. So I chose those, but like I said, I've got like shelf upon shelf upon shelf of books that I could choose. I think it's really interesting that there was just a call out of, guys, let's do this on genealogy books, and none of us grabbed the same book.
I know.
I think that's really cool. I think that's really cool. Do you guys prefer hardback books do you get your books on Kindle?
Yes, no, hardback. I've got to be able to highlight. I've got to be
I
able
need
to
sticky
write.
places.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's right.
And for me, it just depends on the book. If I'm reading a novel type of book, then I like to read it on my Kindle, my Kindle app, because I find that I've purchased a few research books, genealogy books, you know, and put them on the Kindle, and it's frustrating. I want to open them. I want to highlight. I mean, I know you can highlight with the Kindle app, but I want to write notes. I want to mark up the book. I want to. It's not the same, but I guess everybody has their own preference to.
They do.
I think it's Oprah that buys 2 books every time she buys a book. One that she writes up in and one she doesn't touch. It's in her library. But she buys 2. Well, she's got it.
Well, she can afford to buy 2.
Because she's a book reader, but she buys 2. So she buys one for the stickies, the notes in there.
Yeah. Well, that's
I'm not that bad. I'm bad, but I'm not that bad.
That is really
I think I'm a nonfiction snob because I don't read anything that's fiction. I'll read a little bit of historical fiction, but other than that, I'm reading biographies, histories.
Yeah.
Right. I like historical fiction. I think I started reading historical fiction when I was a child. I think the first one I ever read was one on Thomas Jefferson, and that got me hooked into. It was one of those easy reader books, and it got me hooked into wanting to know more about history and thinking. Even as a kid, I think, oh, I wonder if I had people that were there at that time. You know.
Well, you can ask me that right now. For the job that I gotta do.
So yeah, so I do like historical fiction because I kind of helps me kind of learn about. But I like any kind of, and then I get caught up in their lives, and you know, and I want to find out more about them. You know, I can't watch a historical documentary on TV without going to Google afterwards and finding out how much of what I just saw was true.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with books. How much of this book written on this person was true? How much did they fudge because they couldn't find, the filler, put filler information? So I always do that. So you buy books on Kindle. Where else? And Amazon. Where else can you find genealogy books?
So it's kind of been interesting because I purposely went and found genealogy books, but my first thought was to go and bring down all the history books. However, Melissa had that covered for me.
We take care of each other.
Right. It's so important to understand the history. So as well as, I think I got Follow the River on Amazon probably, but the Glenaladale Settlers was put together by a local history society, the Prince Edward Island, so it was a provincial history society.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to contact them to get it. And the other one that just came, and I don't know where it is, it's probably by my bedside, is called Undelivered Letters. And it was a bunch of letters that had been mailed to people who worked, either to or from, people who had worked in the remote Hudson's Bay outlets that had never managed to be delivered. And so they were all stored in one place, and somebody has taken that and transcribed them all. And I got that actually through Abe's books.
Okay. Mm-hmm. There are, we've got our Barnes & Noble, we've got all those, our regular bookstores, whether we go to the brick and mortar store or their online stores that sell.
I would also suggest, and I don't think anybody's mentioned them yet, and you may like them, you may not like them, but Amazon. And the reason why I mention Amazon is for books these, the ones that are out of print, or those local historical books that are no longer in print. I mean, it's not that they're out of print; they just have any more to sell.
Right.
And so, they'll have brand new ones on there, like the Brad Metzler. You can get that brand new, but individual, ordinary people like you and me can go on Amazon and sell their books.
Exactly.
And they'll sell them for a lot less price than they are brand new. You can buy them lightly used. And a lot of times these historical books, when they're out of print and they have none that they're available anymore, for some reason the asking price is really, really high. I don't get that, but I've seen some of these for like $500.
Right.
Just mark them up.
They do. They mark them up. But someone might get on there, though, and put one on there that they just have and want to get rid of.
Sure.
And they'll put it for $20 or something.
Exactly. They're cleaning out grandma's bookshelf or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There are some genealogy book publishing companies, too, that have books that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So those are good to look for. And if you go to conferences, there'll be booksellers there at conferences as well. Go and look through and see what they have that you might not be able to find somewhere else. I recently purchased a book that was put together, like Chris was talking about, letters. But this person lived in a time period in a place where some of my ancestors did, and I'm finding in these letters mentioning some of the family names.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just happened to see the book, picked it up, and started flipping through it and went, oh my goodness, this is from this county, these are these names. So I'm getting wonderful information about what was happening, besides a little, tidbit of a name here and there. So look for those, look for the books that are written about the time period where they lived. So we got, the brick and mortar stores, we've got Amazon, we've got, Google, you can Google books. Google Books has books that you can, that you can
I was going to mention Google Books and Internet Archive, and now some of the places like Ancestry and Family Search are digitizing books to put them on there. So people don't think about entire books being on those places, but there are, and you can download the whole book.
Yes, you can download the whole
copyright usually. Yeah.
And there's some books that it's really good to have downloaded so you can take them with you, Evidence Explained. If you need a template to create a source citation, it's not going to do you any good if the book is sitting in your, you're at an archive and the book is sitting on your desk, or on your bookshelf. So some books like that, it's really, really good to have downloaded to whatever device, store it in the cloud so you can pull it up on anything. So
I actually just today downloaded a book from a university special collections library. And so and it came down in PDF, and it also came down so that it gives me all the like if I was ever to, recommend it, it gives me the citations and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, that's one of, there's books.
Look, right?
There's books everywhere, and Melissa was showing those history books. Check your local genealogy societies or places where your ancestors lived. Call them, see what they have. Their historical societies. See what the archives have. A lot of them have books to sell. A lot of them, I have a bunch of books on the different towns and counties where my ancestors live in South Carolina. Now, my ancestors are not in any of these books. There are photos, though, all throughout it, and they lived on that, they walked those main streets that they were taking photos of, so I can imagine them walking down these streets. What did the courthouse look like back then? What did, the old hotel that's gone now, that is now the post office in one town, but the hotel was there. And so there's a picture of what that used to look like. So that helps us as well place our people in time and how their lives were. So there's so many good books and so little.
That's a good point, Cheri, because if you look, a lot of these local historical societies, genealogical societies, or wherever, there's a county archives is next to me, this next county over, and one of the archivists there, they do index books of their records, and he's done like 25 of them. Now, he puts his on Amazon, and he self-publishes. And so think about, a lot of these places may not advertise them, but they self-publish books. And so it's always great to contact them and ask them if they have anything like that, because they may not be putting it out there advertising. They don't know how or don't want to. And they're just selling them locally.
Right. And how many of these groups, I'll get you in just a second, Mary, how many of these groups, too, have gone through and done cemetery surveys?
Yes.
All sorts of, and I think one of our chats we talked about there, I have seen some censuses written in books, and they've gone through and people have put a little history of the families in these books, and you're not going to find them anywhere else other than a historical society, a genealogy society. So check and see what they have. A lot of them on their websites will show you what books they have for sale. Family histories that have been compiled, all sorts of things like that. Now, sorry, Mary, you've been patient. What did you want to say?
So I was going to talk about HathiTrust. You can download books from that. And the way HathiTrust is set up, you can download one page and then another page and another page. Yeah. And then, a 500-page book. It's
tedious, but it can be done.
But if you are a member of one of their partner libraries, you can download the whole book. So it's a lot of academic things, but for anybody who just happens to maybe be going to FGS in the next few weeks, in Washington, D.C., if you go to the Library of Congress, you can get a Library of Congress library card. And that's one of their partner institutions.
Oh my.
Worth your hour that's going to take you to get to the Library of Congress and do this. You just sign up for the library card, carry it in your wallet, and then now you are a member. And so you can download.
Can you, for those people that are not going to FGS, can you get one online?
I think you have to be there.
To actually
Take your picture and everything. You have to be
Oh,
there.
I see. Okay.
But
I'm doing it,
totally, if you ever go to Washington, D.C., that's a must stop. I mean, seriously, before a lot of other places in Washington, D.C., if you're a genealogist, you want that Library of Congress library card.
Okay, I'm glad you told me that because they're doing some field trips. I signed up for the DAR library, and I'm trying to see if I can gather people to go to the other places. You know, those of us that go to DAR, I'm gonna sit there on the bus with them and go, okay, guys, where do we want to go this afternoon? Because
LOC, go to the Library of Congress.
Totally.
Yeah, those two places are really the places to go. I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Was it Follow the River, the Red River woman? Did you say something about the Hudson Bay?
Yeah, it's
Hudson Bay as in New York?
As in
what Hudson Bay? Canada?
Yeah, Hudson's Bay Company was an outpost. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It owns most of our retail department stores here now.
Okay.
Including Lord and Taylor, by the way.
Now, where are you at?
Where am I at? I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, is she talking about the Hudson as in the river, as in Rensselaer, New York? You know,
actually, the first post was on Hudson's Bay, which is a huge
Hudson's Bay. That's the
down into the Great Lakes eventually.
Okay. And that's my home. That's the
your
Great
home.
Lake. Yeah, I'm actually born and raised in Michigan.
Cool.
Yeah.
These were some great, you guys, these were some great books and some great resources. There's so many out there that people love and they read and they learn from, but some of these I've never heard of. So I appreciate you sharing and thinking about the different genres, not just how to, genealogy books, but like we said, the historical books, the biographies, all those types of things that can help us. And like Mary said too, read some good writing, help us with our writing. If we read good writing, we're going to be better writers. And so whether we're writing client reports or we're writing for our family, they need to be able to understand what we're saying. And we need to be able to write it in a way that's, easy for them and pleasing for them to read and not hard for them to read. So thank you, ladies, for all your wonderful, wonderful books. This has been really great. You got me excited. I just want to go. It's
Amazon's going to crash.
It's raining here. I've got a little bit of lightning. Perfect time. I could just
perfect timing.
Yes.
Had a long day. It's ready to relax, and I'm just going to grab a book.
Great.
And learn something and have a good rest of the evening. You guys have a good rest of the evening too. And for all of you watching, throw in the comments what books you love. We would love to hear and read what you're reading and where you got it from, especially if it's a book that you can't just go onto Amazon and find. We'd love to know where you're finding the books that help you with your research and your family history. So with that, I'd like to say good night, goodbye to everybody, and thank you so much. And I'm excited that looks like we kept recording. As I said, we're trying this new thing. And hopefully this will be a better platform for us all and better for our viewers. So with that, see you next time, everybody, on Gen Friends. Bye.
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 Bye.